Mic check. Welcome back to another episode of the Second Half Podcast. We are back here with the NBA Retired Players Association at the Fontainebleau Resort here for the summer 2024 summer getaway. None other than handle the business. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be right back with other great conversation. I am so excited for this conversation we get to have. Midwest, Purdue University, NBA for the Washington Mystics, now doing great work, not only with Nike, but even some mental health stuff that we're going to talk about here in a second. None other than Leslie Johnson. Leslie, appreciate you being on the podcast.
Let's go. Yes, sir. You got me fired up. Come on.
I love it. Let's get to it.
Let's get it.
So let's start from the jump. Like, where you from originally?
I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Okay. All right.
And it's the city of churches, right?
Okay.
And so everybody knows everybody.
Yep.
And so it was a praying community.
Okay.
And people was big girls basketball fans,
Okay.
even when I came up. And so when I used to play, the gyms used to be packed out. And
Love
it was
it.
this great environment for girls basketball then in the 90s. And to this day, they continue to support me.
Still is.
Fort Wayne community.
Yeah, Fort Wayne.
Shout out to Fort Wayne.
Yeah, you got to shout out Fort Wayne. You know, it's just Indiana's just such a basketball
Yes.
community. You know, us being right next door in Illinois, it was just, you know, we always there was a competition.
Definitely.
You know, and in the days
we still Indiana still think that we have better ballers, but Illinois they're not having it.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. Now, so speaking of that, was basketball your only sport, or did you grew up playing, or did you have other things that you were interested in?
I played volleyball.
Okay.
And I also threw the shot put for a state championship team.
All right. Okay, we winning out the gate.
I was pretty good at the shot put.
Okay.
But of course, basketball was my heart.
That was the heart.
And so I followed my dream and my career. And basketball's been really good to me.
I love that.
And I'm still benefiting to
Still
this day
benefiting, yes,
from the things that I did when I was a kid.
Absolutely. So who was the one that put the ball in your hands?
My dad.
Yeah. Dad was the one.
Yeah, that's the first girl dad I knew.
I
know Kobe put his signature on it.
No, he said,
it was my daddy. My
daddy
was like, yo, come and watch this game with me.
Okay.
And you know how it was back in the day. It was just Lakers or the Celtics.
Yep.
And so, you know, he was screaming, Showtime, Showtime. You know, I love that excitement. And that's what really made me want to play ball. Okay. It wasn't just the art of the game.
Yeah.
It was Magic Johnson's love for the game and how he just made people better. Yeah. And so that was always my heart. I've always been a people person, and I found ways through sports that, you know, we could all help each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show our love.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
So when was it that you realized all this girl dad sitting in front watching Magic play, beat up on those Celtics beating up on the Lakers? When did you realize, like, hey, I can hoop. Like, I'm amongst the best in Indiana and in the nation as well.
Well, I did know pretty early on.
Okay.
And I got to tell you this. So, you know, my height, you know, I'm 6 foot.
Right.
And I've always been a big girl. And so when I was playing growing up, we didn't have the WNBA.
Gotcha.
And so the players that we idolized were NBA players. And so one of my guys that I really looked to was like Akeem Olajuwon. I love Charles Barkley. Yeah. Never knew that later on they would dub me Baby Barkley, a name that has stayed with me to this day because I was just big. But I knew how to use my size, right? And so I knew very early on because the girls would cry and scream and fall down trying to guard me. And I started saying, I think I'm having my way out here. And so I always played against the boys. Yeah. And then when I started beating up on them, I said,
it's go time.
There's no girl alive probably can hold my strength. Yeah. And so I knew early on that I didn't have the height, but I had the strength. And I had the understanding of the sport.
I love that.
And so I had a really great skill set on the low block.
Yep.
And I was able to achieve a lot of great things.
Love it.
National, by the way, it was ranked the #1 center in the country out of high school.
6 foot.
6 foot.
#1 center out of high school.
#1, first team All-American. And when I went to Purdue, I led Purdue to their first Final Four in 1994. And I was a first-team All-American as a freshman.
My goodness, you just speaking of all the accolades from the jump. Like you said, I'm going out here to win, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, because there's going to be a drop because some things I've ran into some calamity.
Oh, sure, of course.
And so that's part of who I am this day,
Yeah.
where I talk about, yes, I had all this great success and, couldn't have got any better at Purdue. Like I said, we won the Big Ten, went to the Final Four, National Freshman of the Year, All-American. But my sophomore year, everything fell apart. Not just changed. It just
dropped out the bottom.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get to that in a second. Tell me a little bit about that journey as you're the highest, you're number one, you're being highly touted. How did you land on Purdue? And who were the other two that were just probably lingering around like?
I love that question.
Yeah, I want to know who got left out the out the playbook.
And I'm gonna tell you why I love it so much. Because there's a quick little bit of history. Back in '94, this was in the era where only women's basketball that we saw was the Final Four.
Yep.
And so the teams that you idolized were the ones seen during the Final Four, which was USC, which was Texas, which was Louisiana Tech. And so I grew up wanting to go to those schools. And my father was like, no, because in this state, you're either Purdue or IU.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was bleeding Boilermakers.
Okay.
And so he was just like, no. And I was like, but there's not a great legacy. They've never won a title. They've never went to the Final Four. And my father was like, yeah, but you're going to start it.
You're going to make it.
You're going to start it. And I was like, man, it felt like a weight. But truly, that's what actually came into fruition. I visited USC.
Okay.
I visited Iowa, which was coached by the great Vivian Stringer at the time.
Coach Stringer.
And the list was long. Louisiana Tech, like I said, they all recruited me. Tennessee recruited me. And I turned out all those schools, UConn as well, to go to Purdue. So many people said, what?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? What in the world? But I've always believed in myself, and I've always been faithful, and I always believe that I was more than a conqueror.
There you go.
And so I took it with me,
more than
and
a conqueror.
I started some unprecedented things.
Yep. I love it. No, so you took the team your freshman year, got to the Final Four, and then, like you said, things drastically changed that second year.
It did.
What was that journey like that you were going through at that early stage in your collegiate career?
Well, we always teach our kids about, things can fall apart. You got to be ready. But no one taught to me about how to deal with success. And I had no clue how to handle the pressure of going to the Final Four. Baby Barkley, everything in West Lafayette at that time. A media presence was everywhere. We were packing out the gym, and people wanted autographs all the time. And I really was just like, what is this? I just wanted to play ball. I just wanted to be successful. And so I did a lot of isolation. And through that isolation, grew into even some depression. But, in the 90s, that was not something that you could bring up. You couldn't talk about it.
Especially in the black community.
Oh, my goodness.
It was taboo.
We're still struggling with it. But back then, it was just like, you got labeled. Like, what's wrong with her? Is she crazy? Like you couldn't express the things that you were going through. And so there I was feeling like the weight of the world was on me to repeat what I did as a freshman. Got off to a rocky start. And so then all that self-disappointment led to a lot of negative things. And eventually I ended up going to Western Kentucky. I transferred.
Transferred out? Because the pressures just got so much.
The pressure got to be way too much for me.
Okay. I'm sure Dad wasn't as excited about that move, but you made it through and ended up getting to Western Kentucky. What was that like down there? Because those are two different mediums, going from Purdue to Western Kentucky, you in the country down there. What's that like?
Well, when I got to Western Kentucky, I played basketball at Purdue at about 220 pounds, 225. Like I said, that was my game. I arrived to Western Kentucky, I was 324 pounds.
Wow.
Yes, I was. Unheard of. But at that time, my saving grace was you sat out a year. Now everybody's going to the portal. But we had to sit out that 1 year and figure it out. And so I began to walk because I couldn't run. I gained so much weight in that transition. It was an unbelievable experience, and it looked like my career was over. And so many people thought that it was. But I decided I can turn this thing around. And so by my senior year, that's exactly what I did, and I became an All-American again as a senior. I would drop over 120 pounds by my senior year, and lowest weight being 215, which was smaller than I ever even played at Purdue.
My goodness.
And so I turned it around.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but I fought for myself.
All the resilience you had.
Myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All that resilience you had to help you go through a deep, troubled issue, challenge during that time to say, hold on, let me believe and conquer myself again. Let me go in there and get back to it and get into that journey.
Yeah.
You made it senior year. Did you think the basketball was going to be done there, or because like you said, you were kind of on the fence. People thought they had wrote you off and all those things, like in your mind, because at the end of the day, you have to believe in yourself. Did you believe that you were going to be done playing at that time, or you were going to continue?
Well, I wrote myself off when I was a sophomore. That sophomore year when everything fell apart. But the moment I decided my story's not going to end here.
Yep.
I'm gonna fight my way back. At that point, I knew that nothing could stop me but myself, and so I did. I started at hard work, and by the time I was at Western Kentucky as a senior, there was this league called the WNBA. And keep in mind, when I was a freshman, it did not exist. As a sophomore, it did not exist. And so it was only in my junior year was the first year of the WNBA.
Okay.
The second year was the year that I played in 1998. But I always dreamed to go play overseas because that was all that we had. But when the WNBA formed, I thought, you know what? I would love to stay home and be able to do both.
Yep.
So making it for me, it's special to everybody.
Yeah.
But for me, knowing that everything that I had defeated, all the turnarounds that I had made, it was very special to me personally.
Absolutely.
Because I knew that it should have been over, and it probably would have been over for most. But, I got back up.
You got back up,
Yeah.
and you found yourself getting a phone call from the Washington Mystics.
Yep.
What did that do for your confidence, your mental, just your natural aura? What did that do for you?
Well, I did not get drafted in 1998. And so when I didn't get drafted, my agent was just trying to continue to get me the WNBA. And, we always had the overseas. So he's like, stay in shape at the Y. So I literally was at the local Y one day. And the following day, my father, my same dad, ran out and said, Leslie, the WNBA has called, and the Washington Mystics have picked you up. And tomorrow, you're going to be playing at the Staples Center. I was like, yesterday, I was at the local Y. The following day, I'm going to be playing in the WNBA. And so this has been my message. And I actually tell that story because I'm like, that's why you don't quit.
Yep.
That's why you don't get up, because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Yeah.
And so that's my story.
I love
that even when it felt like it was over and I had done all I could do at that point, I just kept the faith, kept working hard, and I got the call.
And you got the call.
And I'm still benefiting. The only reason I'm in the NBRPA, because of course you have to be a player.
Yep.
I didn't play very long. I played that one season in 1998, but all I had to do was make it.
Just make it.
And be a part of this.
Yes.
And so I'm still benefiting.
Still a part of a nice fraternal, sororital moment.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
And everyone still takes care. I love that.
Yeah.
So you took the shoes off for the last second. The last time you said, I'm done playing. I'm sure you was like, all right, we done now. What'd you transition to next? Where you at now?
I think the shoes took itself off. My feet was hurting.
So it was
my
done.
Knees was hurting.
Yeah, they get the aching.
So my body told me, you're done. Before my mind did.
Yeah.
And so at that point, again, that was the second part, because I thought I had deep depression and all those things.
Yeah.
But when I got done playing professional basketball, it was like, okay, now what? Now what do I do?
Yeah.
And feeling like a disappointment because I wanted to play longer in the WNBA like most do. And so I struggled with that. But I finally ended up, I worked for the Department of Corrections, became a counselor.
Okay.
Because that was always my passion, to help others. And everything just snowballed. And so, again, I went through some tough times trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But eventually I did. This is something you should know. So when I got done playing ball, I became a raging alcoholic.
Okay.
And I'm one of the few that is willing to say it. I did. Well, just 2 days ago, it's been 12 years since I drank alcohol. I've been in sobriety for 12 years.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
So, thank you.
That's
but I
awesome.
also gained almost 200 pounds after playing ball.
Yeah.
I once weighed 420 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And so, once again, I found myself, I've got to turn this around.
Yeah.
But once I turned it around the second time, gave
Yeah.
up alcohol and all the other things, I knew at that point it was bigger than me.
Yeah.
And so that's how I formed my company called Hush No More.
Okay.
Because I was like, I've got to start telling my story. I've got to start
Absolutely.
shining light on all the other athletes
Absolutely.
that struggle after sports. I'm not the only
You're
one.
not the only
Almost
one.
all of us did.
We all dealing with it in some form or fashion. You're
But
right.
you know, I think that it's so beautiful when you listen to others and they begin to tell us how they came out, how they also didn't know what to do, how they also, felt some depression.
Yeah.
And we all have a different story to tell.
For sure.
But I think it's a beautiful thing when we listen and we hear how others have lifted themselves out and now are also business owners and they
Yes.
figured it out.
Exactly.
But again, there's still work because we still have other basketball brothers and sisters that haven't quite figured it out.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love the NBRPA and I'm passionate about the NBRPA because Scott is always out here seeking more. What can we do?
Yeah.
And so we have people and companies in place
Absolutely.
that can tackle that very thing.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Scott Rochelle
Yes.
and the team because they're doing such a great job, especially inviting us out here. But again, that's what this conversation is for, is to talk to former athletes and then share the stories and the realness about what they're going through and learning in their journey to be able to share because no better person than to tell it than the person going through it. So
Athletes
I
themselves.
appreciate you being here to share that. So tell me a little bit about Hush No More. Tell me where we can actually find a little bit more information about that just as well, because I think there's so many other people who may be in need of that support that we can be able to help get out.
Well, Hush No More, like I said, was not something that I just thought of, well, what can I do to get out? It came from a place of pain.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I overcame and I said, you know what, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And I began to look around. I was like, wait a minute. I don't see any other WNBA players that have their own company. And I only saw where there was one other NBA player that had their own company that tackled mental wellness. And it actually made me very sad. I was like, wait a minute. We don't have, there's been others that are passionate.
Right.
But I said, no, in this conversation, there has to be work.
Yeah.
And so I decided to create the company, Hush No More. You can find me on Hush with HUSHED.
Okay.
HushNoMore.com.
Okay.
And you can find out everything that you need to know. But listen, I have a podcast myself.
Okay. I love it. Okay.
That's why we
That's how we
vibing.
ride. I love it.
That's why we vibing. And I just bring in former pro athletes. I've had WNBA players on NBA, NFL, baseball, and all of them share with me their
I'm
story.
assuming it's the Hush No More podcast, correct?
Hush No More podcast.
There we go. Okay, we're going to tune in.
And
We're
there
going to
will
tap
be a
in.
Hush No More
We're going to
book
tap in.
that's coming
okay,
out in August.
I love it. Okay.
And all it is me sharing my story. But I'm going to give others an opportunity to do the work. It's going to be a self-study workbook where they'll read my story and then they'll have to figure out how does that apply to them.
Yeah.
And make sure that they're not following some of the same trends that I was on.
Yep.
And so I just feel like there's so many things because everybody don't just walk into a clinic and say, I need help.
Right.
Most of us do not.
Exactly.
Especially when you're a former pro athlete.
Exactly. You don't think you do, but reality is.
You may even know you need it, but it's a lot into that. We're talking ego. We're talking shame.
Exactly.
We don't want others to know. We live in a day of social media.
Yep.
Can you imagine if Michael Jordan was to ever go through something and walked in the clinic?
Exactly.
Click.
Exactly.
So people, they don't.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned is that we need all of it. We need our clinical help, but we also need people like me who are conversationalists, who can just go to them and talk to them about their experience and say, hey, this is where the professional help is, but guess what? You can do more because you've come out from your journey.
Yep.
Partner with me, work with me, and let's bring attention to this very topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I appreciate this conversation.
I love it.
I love it. Where can people follow you on social media and all that good stuff?
All the social media platforms, Hush No More.
Okay.
That's on Facebook, that's on Instagram, that's on Twitter. And so the one thing, because you're a Chicago man, I want to bring attention to,
Yes.
because of the relationships that we build with the National Basketball
Yep.
Retired Players
That's what we hear.
Association.
Yep.
Let's get it all in. I was able to build a wonderful relationship with Craig Hodges. Would have never met him had it
World
not been
champion.
for this association. This man is
The
a
great.
two-time,
The great Craig Hodges.
three-time three-point
Yeah.
champion.
Yeah.
And we've had so many conversations, and I said, Craig, you know what? We got to do something together.
Yep.
And so this September, we've got it all figured out.
Yep.
We are going to be releasing a basketball camp.
Okay.
It's actually going to be free to kids.
Okay.
We are going to get all the sponsorship donations that we can to bring it on and put it on. But at the end of the day, it's going to be Hush No More presents Shooting for Mental Wellness with Craig Hodges.
I love it. I love it.
So I'm thrilled about things
Yes.
like that that's going on, the movement, and that will be in Chicago.
I love it.
That's why I mentioned it.
We're going to be there. We're going to support, so we're going to stay in tune with each other.
Okay.
Thank you. No, we appreciate that you sharing your story, because it's extremely important about your second half and
Yep.
your journey. We excited to keep following you and see where you go.
Let's get it.
Let's
go.
go. Yes.
Let's go.
Thank you all for tuning into the Second Half Podcast. More episode. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe button, follow us on all social media platforms. And we're gone. Peace. Thank you, Barkley.